Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're talking about the truth about how to consistently kill elk on public land. Not once, not by accident, not because you got lucky and a bull made a mistake, but consistently. And here's the part a lot of elk hunters don't want to hear. Public land elk are not nearly as random as a lot of elk hunters make them out to be. The problem is not always the unit, the tag, the pressure, or the lack of elk. The problem is that a lot of elk hunters keep hunting the version of elk that they hope to find instead of the version of elk that actually exists once pressure hits the mountain. Elk are reacting to wind, thermals, terrain, cover, feed, cows, roads, and human pressure. And if you want to kill them consistently, you have to stop chasing elk and start predicting their survival. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter. The first truth about consistently killing elk on public land is that you can't build your hunt around hope. A lot of hunters do exactly that. They think it's luck. They hope the bugle they heard 2 years ago means bulls still live there. They hope the old wallow, the pretty meadow, the trail camera photo, and the advice from somebody online is enough to build a hunt around. But hope feels good before the season, and it falls apart and feels terrible fast when the trucks are parked at every trailhead and the elk stop acting like they did in July. Consistent elk hunters don't ignore hope because they're negative. They ignore it because elk hunting rewards evidence, fresh tracks, current feed, real-time pressure, wind, thermals, bedding security, escape routes, and hunter access. All of those matter more than what a spot looked like from your couch, right? It's not about luck. They don't believe in that. They believe in understanding elk behavior. A good elk spot isn't just a place where elk could be, it's a place that still makes sense after people show up, that makes sense to the elk, right? That's the shift. So stop asking, where do I want elk to be? And start asking, where are the elk right now? Where do they need to be to survive? That leads to one of the biggest truths in public land elk hunting. When elk stop acting easy to find, most of the time, they didn't vanish. They just repositioned. One of the biggest mistakes I see public land hunters make is assuming that elk are gone the second they stop seeing them or hearing them. Opening morning comes, pressure hits the country, bugles shut down, tracks get harder to sort out, and suddenly everybody says the same thing. The elk left. Sometimes they do move, but sometimes it was the weather, the feed, the wolves, the hunting pressure, or private land that pulls them somewhere else. But a lot of the time, they didn't leave the entire area. They simply repositioned into places a lot of elk hunters aren't willing or able to hunt correctly. And that might be thicker cover or darker timber, steeper side hills, broken benches and deadfall pockets, or north-facing slopes or little overlooked drainages close to pressure but protected from it. Elk don't need country that looks impressive to you. They only need country that helps them survive. Consistent elk hunters understand this. They don't panic when elk get quiet. They don't immediately abandon a drainage just because the easy sign dried up. They ask, what changed? Where did the pressure come from? Where would elk move to keep wind, cover, distance, and escape routes all in their favor? Pressure doesn't erase elk, it just exposes where they feel safe. That repositioning almost always leads to one thing: elk trading convenience for security. And a lot of elk hunters picture elk hunting the way it looks in their mind before season, like big parks, open basins, clean bugles, bulls stepping out into perfect shooting lanes. And sometimes that can happen, but if you're trying to consistently kill elk on public land, you can't build your entire strategy around the easiest version of elk behavior, right? Once pressure hits, elk usually become a lot harder to find, harder to hear, and harder to approach. They start using country that gives them an advantage more. That may be dark timber, steep north-facing slopes, those broken benches and nasty deadfall areas, avalanche chutes, brushy creek bottoms, or small pockets of cover that a lot of elk hunters walk past because they don't look exciting, or maybe they don't even stand out on a map. But security cover is not just thick timber either. It's any place that gives elk wind, cover, distance, visibility, escape options, and fewer human encounters. That's why the best elk country is often just ugly, inconvenient, and uncomfortable to hunt. Consistent elk hunters accept that reality. They don't hunt postcard elk country, and they don't hunt places that just feel good to them. They start hunting the places that elk use when they're trying to stay alive. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory, it's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. Once you understand that elk are choosing security over everything else a lot of times, the next step is understanding what they're trying to get away from. If you want to consistently kill elk on public land, you have to pay attention to hunter behavior. And that doesn't mean you spend the whole hunt complaining about pressure or watching other camps or letting every truck on the trailhead ruin your attitude. It means you recognize that people are simply part of the elk pattern. Most elk hunters move in predictable ways, right? They park in obvious trailheads, walk the main trails, glass the easy openings, call from the same ridges, check the same wallows, and hunt the same basins that look good on a map. Elk don't need to understand maps to understand that pressure. They just learn where people keep showing up. But consistent elk hunters use that information instead of just being defeated by it. They ask where pressure's coming from, where elk would naturally escape to, and what route allows them to hunt that movement without blowing the country apart. Sometimes the answer is deeper, but sometimes it's just steeper. Sometimes it's closer to the road, but hidden by terrain. The goal is not just to outwork people, the goal is to move differently than people. Now, when you start seeing both elk behavior and hunter behavior clearly, you're going to realize one spot is never enough. A lot of elk hunters walk into elk season with one favorite basin, or one trailhead, or one glassing knob, or one place they're emotionally attached to. And that's not a plan, that's just a wish. And public land elk hunting changes too fast for everything to depend on one spot working exactly the way you imagined. Consistent elk hunters build options before the season ever starts. They have a primary area, but they also have pressure escape areas. They have morning setups, evening setups, midday security pockets, weather backups, and places they can hunt when other hunters change the game. They don't just bounce around randomly, but they also don't sit there stubbornly defending a dead plan. Every single option needs a purpose. One spot might be good before pressure hits. Another might be better after opening weekend. One might be huntable on a north wind. Another might only with a falling evening thermal. One might be a calling setup. Another might be a quiet still hunt or glassing play. Consistency comes from preparation, not panic, right? When elk shift, the prepared hunter adjusts with direction, with purpose. But even the best backup plan becomes worthless if you can't get into it without being detected. Elk live and die by their nose. So if your route, setup, or movement doesn't respect wind and thermals, you're not really hunting elk. You're just hiking through elk country and teaching them where not to be. A lot of elk hunters pick their approach based on the shortest route or the easiest trail or the direction they just want to go. But consistent elk killers start with one question: can I get there without my scent being there first? If the answer is no, they change the route, change the timing, or leave that spot alone until those conditions are right. Morning thermals are usually falling. We're talking about first thing in the morning, right? As we transition from night into daylight, thermals are falling. As the sun hits the slope, because that's what thermal means, heat, thermals often begin to rise. In the evening, once that cool air starts to pull scent downhill again, we have to be aware of that change. Wind can override all of it as well. And unstable mountain air can punish lazy assumptions fast, so we've always got to be checking. And that's why timing matters so much. A basin might be perfect in the morning and completely wrong in the evening. A bedding pocket might be loaded with elk, but if you can't approach it cleanly, it's not going to be huntable today. Consistency starts when your route is built around the elk's nose, not just your convenience. And once you understand how easily scent can ruin a setup, you should also understand how easily sound can do the same thing. But a lot of elk hunters treat calling like it's the entire elk hunt. They get into the woods, make noise, wait for a response, and then judge the day based on whether something bugles back. Calling can absolutely kill elk. Do it all the time, right? But calling without position, wind, timing, and purpose can also educate elk faster than almost anything else you do. Consistent elk hunters don't call just because they're bored, impatient, or trying to use one tactic to force the elk to give them confidence. They call when the situation gives them a reason to call. Maybe they need to locate a bull. Maybe they're trying to pull a bull those final few yards into shooting range. Maybe they're using cow sounds to calm elk down, stop movement, or create curiosity. But they're not randomly just advertising their location all day or just trying to get a bull to talk and then talk to him for 20 bugles back and forth. On public land, elk hear bad calling constantly. They hear hunters calling from roads, trails, open ridges, and terrible wind positions. And that pressure teaches elk to be cautious. The truth here is simple. Calling is powerful when it supports the setup, but it's dangerous when it replaces the setup. And when calling doesn't create an immediate answer, that's where a lot of elk hunters make their next major mistake. Midday, I believe, is where public land elk hunts are often won or lost. A lot of hunters hunt hard for the first couple hours, lose confidence when the bugling stops or if they haven't heard any, and then drift back to camp or drive roads or trek another drainage or start randomly covering country just to feel productive. And in my opinion, that's not a strategy. That's just frustration or lack of knowledge about elk with boots on. Consistent elk hunters treat midday differently. They understand that elk might not be loud, visible, or easy to locate during that window, but they are still somewhere. They might be bedded in shade or tucked into security cover, holding below a bench or sitting in dark timber, or just using broken terrain where wind and visibility protect them. And that doesn't mean you charge through bedding country and blow everything out, but it does mean you can slow down, you can glass into shade, you can watch escape routes, you can still hunt with control extremely slowly. You use midday to confirm sign and understand pressure and get positioned for the evening shift. Midday discipline is not glamorous, but it does separate hunters who keep thinking from the hunters who simply wait for elk to make noise again. And that kind of midday discipline takes more than motivation. It takes a body and a mind that still work when the hunt starts getting uncomfortable. You can't fake your way through elk country. Steep climbs, heavy packs, thin air, deadfall, long days, and brutal packouts expose people fast. If your legs quit, your options shrink. If your lungs are gone, you avoid the country elk are actually using. If your body can't recover, each day gets sloppier than the last. But physical toughness alone doesn't consistently kill elk either. It only gives you the ability to make decisions deeper into the hunt. The real separator is decision toughness. Can you still respect the wind when you're tired? Can you slow down when every part of you wants to rush for fear of missing out? Can you stay off the skyline? Check your approach, hold your setup, and pass a bad shot when your brain is screaming that this might be your only chance? A fit hunter can still blow elk out of a drainage, right? A tough hunter can still overcall, push too fast, or abandon a good plan too early. But consistency does come when your conditioning supports your discipline. Your body gets you into the game, your decisions decide whether you stay in it. So training for all of this is extremely important. And when your body and your discipline and your decisions are all working together, the actual kill usually becomes the final result result of a system that was already in motion. A lot of elk hunters think the kill is the moment that defines the hunt, the shot, the bugle, the bull stepping into range. But by the time that all happens, by the time the moment happens, the hunt has usually already been won or lost by everything that came before it. You found fresh sign where elk had a reason to be. You understood how pressure was shaping their movement. You approached with the wind and thermals instead of fighting them or guessing. You chose a setup that gave you cover, shooting lanes, and a chance to move if the bull didn't do exactly what you wanted him to do. You stayed patient when nothing happened right away. You didn't rush the call, the stalk, the draw, or the shot. All of that is what consistency looks like in elk hunting. It's not one heroic decision or moment. It's a chain of small, correct decisions that are all stacked together until the opportunity finally presents itself. Public land elk rarely give you a perfect chance. They give you a narrow window, and consistent elk hunters are ready because they built the hunt correctly before that window ever appeared. Now, if the kill is the result of a system, then the hardest truth to hear is that most hunters don't need more secrets. They need to stop abandoning that system. Most elk hunters are not unsuccessful because they lack some hidden piece of information. They are unsuccessful because they keep looking for a shortcut around the fundamentals. They want a better unit before they understand pressure. They want a louder bugle before they understand positioning. They want a deeper spot before they understand access. They want the elk to act like the videos they watch instead of the pressured animals they're actually hunting and actually taking the time to understand elk behavior. And I'm not trying to say that elk hunting should be easy at some point, because I don't think that it ever will be. Public land can be crowded, weather can wreck a plan, elk can cross onto private, wolves, roads, tag pressure, terrain, and timing, all of it matters. But those realities don't remove the responsibility from the hunter. The consistent elk killers accept the difficulty without using it as an excuse. They keep reading sign, they keep protecting the wind, they keep adjusting to pressure, they keep making disciplined decisions when the hunt gets frustrating. Now, this boils down to a pretty simple truth, right? Consistent elk hunters are the ones who stay honest longer than everybody else. These truths about consistently killing elk on public land aren't flashy, but they are real. You don't become consistent by chasing shortcuts or copying random advice or hoping elk act the way that they did before pressure hit. You become consistent by understanding how elk survive. You learn how pressure changes movement. You respect wind and thermals. You build more than one option. You stop treating calling like a magic trick and start using it with purpose. You stay disciplined through the middle of the day, through fatigue, through frustration, and through the moments when most elk hunters start guessing. Public land elk hunting will always be hard, and that's the part that makes it worth doing. But hard doesn't mean random. The hunters who kill every year, year after year, are not just lucky. They're honest, prepared, adaptable, and disciplined long enough for the mountain to finally give them a chance. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you. Hope to see you in the comments. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.